Hey everyone, it's James coming on for a live stream this afternoon. I am up in Connecticut on my way to Rhode Island, and I wanted to take some time. We'll see how this goes. I'm live streaming because my camera's down. I've been trying to focus on the camera a little bit more, but I think it's operator error, so I think it's going to be back up once I have access to it again when I get home. I love it home. So I'm live streaming here and hoping that the connection holds up because typically it's been unreliable lately, which is why I haven't live streamed as much, among other reasons. But I want to talk about today what I'm seeing. And I'm going to start several months back and work my way up to the present. I have been going on a journey the past several months because I realized at some point, quite by accident, that while I'm telling everyone the dangers of living in echo chambers, was living in an echo chamber. While I'm telling everyone the dangers of attending Dunning-Kruger University, I myself was a student there. So these traps that we can so easily fall into. And when you're in a trap like that, it's easy to see other people in that trap, but it's not so easy to see yourself in that trap. I don't even remember how this happened, but I have a tendency while I'm driving down the road to have YouTube up, listening to various type of podcasts, news type things, current events. And somehow or other, over the past several months, I don't even remember when, it might even be over a year at this point, maybe going on 2 years. It's been a while. Somehow or other, I became exposed to Rupert Sheldrake. You guys have maybe heard me drop that name before, but he is a scientist, a botanist by trade out of England, and very interesting man. But he is also what I would consider a natural philosopher. A natural philosopher is a species of scientist that is pretty much extinct, or at least they were until recently. Natural philosophers are people that love philosophy, love of wisdom. So these are people that are really into Plato and Aristotle, Socrates, Spinoza. Name whatever philosopher you can think of. But they're also very much into science. They're always investigating the natural world. And their whole reason for doing this and combining these two efforts that we're told today in our Cartesian model are diametrically opposite of each other. They can't coexist. Cartesian refers to Rene Descartes and his whole separation of the natural and the spiritual and mental worlds. That's kind of where we're at today. We're at today a place where science is the realm of the physical, everything that can be touched and measured and poked and prodded and quantified. And everything that's left goes to the clergy and the philosophers, the mind, the spirit, things that cannot be empirically touched, handled, tasted, smelled, put in a petri dish. Okay? And so that brought us through, going into the Enlightenment times, up into modernity, and even post-modernity. And where we're at now is science. Most of your scientists are some type of atheist or agnostic. It used to not always be that way. It used to be pretty much all of your scientists were religious in some way. Okay, so we've had this whole paradigm shift over the last several centuries, going towards materialism in the world. And one of the things that Rupert pointed out was, he pointed out this distinction, and he actually had a TED Talk that was kind of banned for a little bit because he dared to actually talk about this. How dare you talk about the problem with science as an actual scientist from within the world of science? So it was interesting to me, but as part of that journey, however I came to find Rupert, he started name-dropping other people. And me being curious, I went to investigate those other people. He dropped names like David Bentley Hart. He dropped names like, who are some good ones? Ian McGilchrist, Mark Vernon. These are names that you've probably seen me post quotes from these people and even videos over the past several months. And what I ended up doing, and like I said, it was quite by accident. I didn't intend to go down this road. But I found myself getting outside of my echo chamber. I found myself really digging into these people. And the reason why I think I was so engaged with these people, most of them are evolutionists. I am not an evolutionist. I am a creationist. And all but one of them, David Bentley Hart, is a scholar. He's like an actual theologian. Most of these people in this orbit, and the orbit's been expanding, people I've been reading, are some type of agnostic. They're not atheists. They're not like opposed to belief in God, but they just don't know about it, or some type of spiritual. Okay, they're not Christians, and a lot of them, like I said, most of them are evolutionists. I think David Bentley Hart even has a soft spot for evolution. I am not. But what I found so fascinating about these guys, and I think the reason I was drawn to them was because their emphasis on life and their emphasis in compassion for life, human life and natural life, that of nature. That is something that I share. And once I got out of my echo chamber and I saw, wait a minute, there are these people that I would consider secular, that I would consider, definitely not believers for the most part. Why do they have the same type of interest in life that I do? Some of the names that I'll add that I've picked up, more recently are names like Daniel Schmachtenberger, John Vervaeke, Jonathan Pageau, some others. But they all have this focus on life. And I've talked about this before. There is at least in the Western world, what we used to call Christendom, there is a great despair amongst the populace. We see things are going in a very bad direction. Nobody really knows what to do about it. Some of the great thinkers of our time, like Daniel Schmachtenberger, have coined this various, they call it the meta-crisis. Some people call it the poly-crisis, which is a little bit more governmental. You see that phrase being used by like the UN, the World Economic Forum. People that are kind of tangential to that realm, but yet interact with it, tend to call it the meta-crisis. Because the poly-crisis is just, here's all these multiple crises, we have to handle them. No. The meta-crisis says there's a reason why we have a poly-crisis. Why do we have so many problems? It's because of us. It's because of human nature. It's because of what we're doing. How do we fix that? So their emphasis is on preserving life on a civilizational scale by getting to the root causes of why we are destroying life on a civilizational scale. That resonates with me. Now, obviously, they're not seeing things through a biblically prophetic lens. They're not looking at Revelation as a roadmap of what's going to go down. But they have the same sense that something is going down. And so, anyway, going on that journey, I thought it was interesting. Like, I see so many people debating. And debating to me is worthless. It's useless in the grand scheme of things. I know people will disagree. That's fine. When I see debates, I see two people coming in with their opinions. Of course, they're both right. And the goal is to, if you can, prove your opponent right. And if you can't prove your opponent right, at least somebody watching the debate will come along and see that you're right. I am more of the mind that we should be practicing dialectic. And some of you are like, oh no, he said dialectic in a good way. Yes, I did. Dialectic doesn't have to be this problem, reaction, solution thing that most of us in the conspiracy realist world have been taught for decades. Yes, that is a real thing. That is a dialectic that comes from Marx, the best I can tell, not Hegel. People call it the Hegelian dialectic, but that's a misnomer. Hegel's dialectic was, hey, there are two opposite points of view. And if we dialogue, which is a kin word to dialectic, they come from the same word, if we talk about it, then we can find commonality. We can find something in the opposite, and we can realize, hey, these things that we thought were opposites really are not opposites. They're complementary. And so that's the whole thing. Hegel wasn't problem, reaction, solution. Hegel was thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Synthesis is a combining. You're finding something in the thesis and the antithesis that can be combined into making something new. We do that all the time. We just don't think about it. Anytime we have a tension between a couple things, a couple thoughts, a couple actions, anytime where there's this tension, between two things that seem to be at odds, and it gets resolved, that's a form of dialectic, even if we're not verbally talking between people. It's the same idea. That's a very useful thing. So what I found is that going out of my echo chamber and listening to these people talking about the same thing that I am most interested in, life, from their perspective, using their vocabulary. And this was really key to me. We don't often think, but when we think in language. Ever since I learned how to speak, it was the English language. So my thoughts in my head are always in English before they come out of my mouth, or even when they don't come out of my mouth. Multilingual people, from what I understand, tend to think in their first language, or the language that they speak the most, one or the other. Like if you know 18 languages, you don't think in 18 languages all the time. You pick one. It's easier. And so the idea is that by getting out of my echo chamber, I learned a new vocabulary. Because these people were talking about the same thing that I'm interested in, using a completely different vocabulary set. They weren't talking about it in biblical terms. They were talking about it in philosophical terms. They're related. You can find philosophy all through the scriptures, but they're not the same. And so by allowing myself to spend some time in their echo chamber, I was able to find out some things about my own beliefs, and I was able to kind of come to grips with some of the places where I might have been off, and I was able to find new ways to kind of express these ideas I've had in my head, just kind of rambling around for a while, but I didn't have the words for them. Things to do with life. Now, obviously, they didn't persuade me to go to evolution. They didn't persuade me to go off into secularism. All they did was give me some new vocabulary and a new perspective on life, which I'm very much interested in. Now, part of that perspective is they made a very salient point. They all have said this. We need to rediscover the sacred. I shared a video. It was a three-way conversation. I've shared it multiple times because I think it's hugely profound, and I wish everybody would take the time to sit and watch it. Daniel Schmachtenberger is having a conversation, kind of an interview, casual thing, with Dr. Ian McGilchrist and Dr. John Vervaeke, and they're talking about this kind of stuff. And they all are like, we've got to get some sense of the sacred back into the public space. Why? Because humanity is overstepping its bounds. We are going too far as a species. We are overstepping where we naturally should be stepping, and that is damaging humanity and the planet. This is from their perspective. And I agree. Anytime you go too far, you cause damage. The very nature of sacred has to do with holiness, being set apart. The sanctuary in a church is a set-apart space. The Holy of Holies in the tabernacle was a set-apart space. There are boundaries. You cannot overstep your boundaries and go into the Holy of Holies without penalty of death. It is that sacred and that set apart. And their idea is we need to get not only just to rediscover a sense of the sacred, but it needs to be a deep-rooted sense of sacredness such that humanity trains themselves not to cross it. And I agree. Where I disagree is some of these guys, John Vervaeke used this word, he used this language, describing it as and he talked about going back to Christianity. Now, John Vervaeke, as far as I know, is agnostic. But as an agnostic, it's weird because he also practices Zen Buddhism. Of course, Zen Buddhism is non-theistic, so I guess you could be agnostic or even atheist and practice Buddhism because it's really about the inner self. It's not about gods and beings that transcend you. It's about transcending your inner self by knowing your inner self fully. But it's interesting because he talked about bringing Christianity back into the mix. We need to get back to Christianity. And what did he mean? Religio. Religion. Religio means bind. Now, I am for true religion. I think religion has gotten a bad name lately because of how it's been abused. And used as a tool for abuse. Religio, the binding of humans to other humans with a common purpose. And that group of bound humans to a God with a higher purpose. That's what they're talking about. That's what John Vervaeke wants to get back to. People like him, they want to get back to that binding together. And when something is bound, it's constrained, it's limited. When we are bound together, if you imagine like a sheaf of wheat, all these individual stalks of wheat tied up together. They have a boundary about them that they cannot cross. They're restrained. So religio restrains. But the human will doesn't want to be restrained. So in the West, we have done everything we can to escape those restraints so that we can exercise the full totality of our human wills. And this is the problem. This is the problem that they see. This is the problem that I see. This is harmful to life. So they're calling for a return to the sacred. And most of these guys are thinking about Christianity. Because Christianity, at its best, is a positive societal force. At its worst, it destroys societies. They're talking about the religio part of Christianity, the binding part. They're not talking about the theology per se. They're not talking about the deep corners of doctrine that we like to hide in and make our little elite clubs and, oh, we're exclusive and you guys just don't know the truth. They're not talking about that. They're talking about common purpose. These guys are using the language of ritual. Rupert Sheldrake is a Christian only because of the ritual. He doesn't believe, literally, in the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. He's an evolutionist. Nobody would look at Rupert Sheldrake and say, that guy's obviously a Christian. But he goes to church every Sunday in the Anglican church. He goes on pilgrimage walks. He prays. He sings hymns. Why? It's because he's trying to connect back to the sacred in the way of his ancestors. His ancestors are English. The Anglican Church has been the Church of England for a good while. And prior to that, you had, Christianity in general, the Catholic Church. I'll get to that here in a minute. So there's this drive among non-Christians to bring Christianity back into the fore as a means to keep from capsizing. You don't see this unless you step into that world and allow yourself to see it. When we stay in our Christian echo chambers, and our Hebrew Roots Torah echo chambers, and our Jewish echo chambers, and whatever, we don't see this because it's not in front of us. And I'm so blessed to have been able to see it. So that's kind of where they're at. Big picture. We need to return to the sacred. Now, if we come back into the realms of Christendom and we look at the church, something that I have found that I didn't know. I knew that there were an increasing number of Protestants moving into Catholicism. What I did not know is that since, I think it was between 2022 and 2024, there were, I think they started off around 600,000 Orthodox Christians in the world. That number went up to 7 million in the space of 2 or 3 years. That's huge. I found out about this because I was raised a Protestant. And as a Protestant, what do we think about? We think of Protestants and Roman Catholics, right? We think of that. We think of Martin Luther throwing down the gauntlet to the church and saying, we're done, we're out, faith alone. That's what we think about. The Catholic Church is all over the media. It's always in the movies. If you need a priest, you call an exorcist, you call a Catholic priest. You don't call like some Baptist minister to come. You don't do that in the movies. What I didn't know was that the Orthodox Church, I mean the whole Eastern Orthodox Church, that includes Russian, Romanian, Greek, all the different satellites, the Orthodox Church, that has been gaining huge traction, completely under the radar. most of those people going over to Eastern Orthodox are Protestants. The vast majority are Protestants. And so from within Protestantism, we tend to say, oh, everybody's leaving. Why? It's because we don't have a Starbucks. It's because we're not cool enough. We need to all look like Stephen Furtick, and we'll get them in. Like, that's kind of where we're going in the Protestant church, generally speaking. I saw a meme where somebody did a fake Elon Musk post, and it was like, next I'm going to buy Caleb and put real Christian artists back on it, or something like that. It's like, ooh, that's spicy, but we can kind of see where that's coming from. So the idea is that the Protestant church is losing ground on a level we haven't seen. People are just jumping ship. And what I've discovered is that there are a few reasons. A, they're wanting some transcendent experience in the church. They're wanting to communicate with God directly and experience that like direct spiritual thing, and they're not getting it. They're promised it, they're not getting it. So what do when we're promised something and we don't get it? We go somewhere else. A lot of these young people are going into occultism, spiritism, and they're doing Ouija boards and seances and things like this. Yeah, they're contacting spirits. They're getting their spiritual kicks that they were looking for in the church. But a lot of these Protestants are leaving Protestantism because, and when I say Protestants, I'm talking about young people here. They're leaving the Protestant church because the Protestant church has worked so hard to bring the world into the church, to make the Protestant church look like the world, to attract people, that they made it just as ugly as the world. And these young people are looking at the Protestant churches and they're like, I don't want to go there. It looks just like the world, and the world sucks. Because largely in Protestant world, there is no sense of the sacred anymore. You don't walk into a Protestant church these days and see huge stained glass and all this iconography, and like it lacks the sense of holiness that you would find in a lot of the Catholic churches and the old world churches. You just don't see it. And so these are people that are looking for something more than what the Protestant world can offer them. Now, we look at Roman Catholicism, and Roman Catholicism had the Crusades, it had the Inquisition, it had all this crazy stuff in its history where it embodied the exact opposite of Christ's ideals while claiming to speak in his name. The Eastern Church doesn't have that baggage. People don't know much about the Eastern Orthodox Church. For those of you that don't know, I'll give you a brief history lesson. There was a schism. The church split. The original Catholic Church split. And the Western Church stayed centered in Rome. They became what we call the Roman Catholic Church. And the Eastern Church was in Constantinople at the time, which became the Byzantine Empire, and now we call it City Istanbul because it's in Turkey. But they split. This was before Martin Luther. So, during all this conflict between the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant Church, the Eastern Orthodox, they're just doing their own thing. They don't have the baggage associated with them, at least in the public mind, that Protestants and Roman Catholics do. So it's very appealing. People see a greater continuity in the Eastern Orthodox Church going back to what they perceive as the Apostolic Age. I disagree with that, but that's what people see because of the lack of drama. So people are going in huge numbers to the Eastern Orthodox Church. These are things that I would not have seen had I stayed inside my echo chamber. So let's get back up to more modern times. We're in this culture war here in America and in the West, the left and the right. And increasingly, the right is coalescing around Christianity. Christian nationalism is kind of what we're calling it. Different people might disagree with that term, but that's kind of what we're doing. Let's make our nation Christian again. And the idea is that if we do that, we can fight back against the left in progressivism. We can fight back against the LGBTQ agenda. We can fight back against this and that and the other and just make everything hunky-dory. And it's appealing. Because, by and large, the progressives that are doing all the crazy stuff don't identify as Christians. So it's easy to say, well, the problem is they're not Christians. So if we gravitate more to Christianity, solution, great. They're coming to the same conclusion that John Vervaeke and others did, but for different reasons and from a different perspective. All of these people, secular, non-secular, Christian, non-Christian, they're all saying the same thing. We need more Christianity. In the culture wars, my fear is that Christianity will not end up being a true biblical Christianity. In the culture war, because it's a war, I see Christianity being used as a tool to win the war. The same way these thinkers that I'm talking about are thinking of Christianity as a tool to keep the end of the world at bay. In other words, Christianity, the moral aspect of Christianity, will be what we use to define the sacred that we choose to protect. And so the idea that America, as a Christian nation with Christian morals, will do Christian things and that'll just save the day, we don't stop to think about it. If we're just talking morality, basic right and wrong, Christian morality is basically the same as Jewish morality. I'm going to say some things here. Muslim morality, Buddhist morality, Hindu morality. All the world religions have the same basic blueprint for how to love your neighbor. Where they differ is on how you interact with the deity, with the divine. That's where they differ. The moral code is roughly the same. Now, yes, you have extremists in all of these faiths that take the moral code to a hyper extreme. We tend to think of Sharia law. The vast majority of Muslims don't want Sharia law. It's the vocal minority that do. But in any case, if we're talking moral code, it doesn't have to be a Christian moral code to make things better. But Christianity has a framework. It has a hierarchy of power within it, a structure that people are seeing as beneficial. People are seeing Christianity as a means to bring back the religio, the binding, and bring us all together. In the culture wars, the right can be united around Christ. Why? Not to serve Christ, but to fight the left. This is what I'm seeing. When I go to the whole Charlie Kirk thing, it troubles me. It troubles me the number of people that are making an opportunity out of it for their agendas. And we, in the right, meaning the right end of the political spectrum, I am conservative. Some of you may think not, but I am. We have historically, whenever somebody that we wouldn't expect is one of us, we're like, yay! When we find out a Hollywood celebrity is conservative, oh, it's the biggest thing ever, especially if she's cute, right? This is what Republicans tend to do. When we see somebody in the public sphere, like Charlie Kirk. Nobody on my Facebook page was talking about Charlie Kirk forever. And all of a sudden, he's this great man of God. And look, I'm not saying anything about whether he was or wasn't. I'm talking about what people are saying about him. Don't misunderstand. All of a sudden, he's been lionized into this saintly figure. And all he wanted to do was share the gospel. And it's like, we need to be more like Charlie Kirk. Okay, cool. Let's assume that that's true. Good. We should all be more like Charlie Kirk. We should all be sharing the gospel. 100% agreement. But what's the reason for that? What are we doing? I say we. I'm not saying what was Charlie Kirk doing. I'm saying what are we doing? What's our purpose for that? Do we want to win souls for the kingdom? Or do we want to make America great again? Do we want to establish a Christian nation? A Christian nation is incompatible with the kingdom of God. Why? Because it's a nation. A nation, as we know it in modern society, as an apparatus, is antithetical to the kingdom of Yahweh. They can't be the same. This is why, before he brings his kingdom in, we all need, anyone who's going to be in that kingdom, needs to be given a new heart and a new spirit. Because if we try to do all that kingdom stuff now, with our current heart and current spirit, it's doomed to fail. This is my concern. People are looking at Charlie Kirk, and it's been a motivator to try to restore what people are seeing as kingdom ideals, Christianity. Now's our moment. What are we restoring? Conservatism. What are we conserving? Do we even know? Is there a list of things we're conserving? I could ask the progressives the same thing. What are we progressing towards? Nobody really knows. But this whole us and them thing. And when I saw Charlie Kirk, I knew this for a little bit, that he was talking about keeping the Sabbath. As a Sabbath keeper myself, whenever I see a high-profile person keep the Sabbath, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like Glenn Campbell, when I found out that he was a Sabbath keeper, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. But I'm seeing all these people, and I'm about to rain on some parades here. I'm seeing a lot of people. His book coming out in December on the Sabbath has already become a bestseller on pre-order. And a lot of that is driven by people who are Sabbath keepers. Yay, Charlie Kirk, keeping the Sabbath. Yeah, it's great. My concern with this is that we are falling into that he's one of us trap. And we identify with him because we see him doing things that are similar to us. We see Charlie Kirk going towards the Sabbath as a means of coming back to the sacred. And there's something to that. We see Charlie Kirk sharing the gospel as a return to the sacred. And if the culture would just follow along Charlie Kirk's lead, we would come back to the sacred and the culture war would be over. But what we don't stop to think about is, I've watched several of these clips where he's talking about the Sabbath. And he seems to be of the mind, just keep it whenever. The point is to get away from technology. Unwind, take a breather, spend some time with your family. All that's good. 100%. But in all the clips I found, that seems to be the focus. And his Catholic wife is sitting there saying, this is great. Since Charlie and I have been keeping the Sabbath, he's a different man. I've seen positive change. Since when do Roman Catholics advocate keeping the Sabbath? This is the thing. The best I can tell, Charlie Kirk is not advocating for keeping the seventh-day Sabbath for the reasons actually outlined in the Scriptures. You know, Sabbath as a principle, the rest part of it is good. There's a profound depth to knowing what that means and experiencing it. But it seems like we're stopping short there. It seems like the holiness is being left out. And it seems like the purpose of the Sabbath is being left out. And this is where, I feel like we're falling into a trap. I really do. And I shared a video from Candace Owens earlier, and I put some timestamps on there that I thought were really interesting because people are focusing on who killed him. I don't care who killed him at this point. You know, I don't, to me, what happened before, how that bullet got into his neck doesn't matter to me as much as what's happening afterwards. What's happening afterwards? I see Candace Owens and the whole live stream where she's laying out how she thinks Israel's behind it and all this kind of stuff. She takes a moment and she says, Charlie was transforming. He was praying the rosary. I see somebody mention this in the comment. You beat me to it. He was praying the rosary and going to Mass. And I kept joking with him. This is Candace saying, "You're too smart for Protestantism." When I heard her say that, it was like, whoa, you're too smart for Protestantism. And this is kind of what we're looking at. The people that have gone into Spiritism to get a transcendent experience are too smart for Protestantism. The ones going to the Eastern Orthodox Church are doing it because they're too smart for Protestantism. Protestantism is not giving people what they need. So the smart ones are going elsewhere. It is what it is. I didn't make that the reality. I'm just putting words to it. The Protestant church is feeding fewer and fewer sheep, so they are going looking for other shepherds. Charlie Kirk was apparently going to transition into the Catholic Church. We'll never know for sure if that was ever going to happen, but there seems to be enough evidence that he was kind of on his way. I mean, if his wife was Catholic, it makes sense. But this is where I get to my main point here. How do you keep the Sabbath as a Roman Catholic, and why? The Catholic Church doesn't even advocate keeping a rest day on Sunday anymore. Now, historically, Christians have kept the Sabbath on Sunday. They've stopped resting. They've gone to church. They've done things that we would typically associate with biblical seventh-day Sabbath, just on the first day of the week. And I've been talking for years about this. In Europe, there has been a lot of talk about bringing back the Sabbath. Not because it's sacred, not because it's in the Decalogue, but because humans need a break. We need more family time. And over in Europe, the Catholic Church has been actually trying to push legislation for several years to make it national law to have Sunday as a Sabbath. Places shut down. One of the side effects of this is if factories are shutting down one day in 7, that's cutting down our carbon footprint, our pollution. Everybody wins. We're missing the point when we go down this road. I'm seeing too many people jumping into this Christianity that's being put before us because they're starving. I said something the other day, and I don't think that a lot of people understood it. Maybe they disagreed. If a man is starving, you'll put anything, anything on the table in front of him, he will eat it. Because he's starving. He's not going to think about, hey, gee, where did this food come from? And he's not going to think, should I even eat this? Is it even healthy for me? No, he's starving. We, as Bible believers, are having food put before us that I believe is unhealthy for us. But because we're starving, everyone I see online is stuffing their faces with it. Charlie Kirk's Sabbath book is coming out on Winning Team Publishing. What is this, football? Winning Team Publishing. It's a publishing imprint from Donald Trump Jr., the best I can tell. It's a Trump publication. Isn't he always talking about winning? Oh, we're winning. We're winning, 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 winning. All the time we're winning. Why do you publish a book when you're up to your eyeballs in the culture war on the right side? Why do you publish a book about keeping the Sabbath at that time when you're also apparently converting to Roman Catholicism, and you do it on Winning Team Publishing? Might as well call it MAGA Publishing. Why? My concern, my fear, is that a lot of well-meaning Christians and Torah people are going to be swept up in this wave of winning. We're finally seeing movement in a good direction. We're finally seeing things go our way. This is great. Let's all take a moment and celebrate. But I'm calling for restraint. I'm saying let's slow down and take a look at this and see, is this really where we want to go? Do we really want to go into a world where we're sort of keeping the Sabbath? Where we're sort of doing Christian things, but hey, the Democrats have been defeated. Yay! Is that where we're going? I fear for where we're going. Because I look in the scriptures, and I see Matthew 7, people calling him Lord, Lord. These are Christians doing wondrous works, miracles, healings. He says, depart from me. I never knew you. You should have been doing my Father's will. I'm paraphrasing. These are people who did not know his Father's will, but yet they were doing signs and wonders in his name. He calls them lawless. He says they practice lawlessness. Anomia. Keeping the Sabbath one day in 7 is not the same as keeping it on the 7th day, regardless of your intentions. Doing things that are morally Christian is not the same as doing God's will. But we've gotten so accustomed to the left slam dunking on us every chance they get that we will take anything we can get that will even the playing field. And I'm afraid that's going to lead us to our doom. We're going to settle for less. We're going to settle for compromise to win. And I'm generalizing. Not everybody that is caught up in this is going this trajectory. If you're not, hallelujah. But I'm concerned that a great many are. When we look at the man of lawlessness, anomia. When we look in Revelation, what does the dragon do? In chapter 12, he goes after the seed of the woman who keep the commandments of Yahweh and the testimony in Yahshua, both. You're not keeping the commandments of Elohim, of Yahweh, if you're doing it in a way that he said not to. We go to the golden calf. This is Yahweh, Aaron said. So you could make the argument that they were worshiping Yahweh because they said they were. But what were they doing to worship Yahweh? Were they doing it the way he said? No. So we can say we're worshiping Yahweh all day long. We can believe it in our hearts in all sincerity. But if it's not the way he said, are we really? This is my concern. The son of perdition. The anti-Messiah, also Judas. Judas was a disciple, one of the 12. Nobody had any concept that he would turn and betray the master until the very last minute. Because he looked like them, he walked like them, he talked like them, he dressed like them, he was in their echo chamber. We have to be very careful, assuming that because people look like us and talk like us and use our language and are in our echo chamber and we have mutual beliefs and we have a mutual purpose, that we're not really dealing with the son of perdition. Some of you can probably see where I'm going here. Some of you are resistant to where I'm going here. I believe with all my heart, all my soul, and all my being that a trap is being sprung right now. We've been primed to fall into it. We've been primed to not realize we're in it. And all you people that are out there, oh, I'm awake. I'm awake. I see the truth. I've been chosen to see the truth. Time will tell. I'll just put it nicely and say time will tell. Anyway, I hope that this provokes some thought. I hope that this is provocative. I hope that it actually causes people to stop and think. Like, James is saying some hard things here. James is saying some things that I don't want to hear right now. I'm excited about the potential for where things could possibly go because people are talking about revival. There's going to be 1,800 new chapters of TPUSA. People are talking about like this huge wave of revival coming. And this revival is a backlash in the culture war. That's all it is. It's a response in the culture war. People that are latching on to Christianity as a tool to win the culture war. That is what we're seeing. I will say it with a full stop on the end. We're not seeing true revival coming out of this. We're seeing a further slide down to our basest instincts. And we're going to settle on a Christianity that is lawless. People say it is lawless. You ain't see nothing to what's coming.
Say a command.
Anyway, I'll leave it with that. Time will tell.